When Emily Carter, a student orator famous for her sharp style and uncompromising will, stepped up to the podium, the entire auditorium fell silent in anticipation. With her bright purple hair and eyes ablaze with conviction, she believed her fiery voice would crush any opposing opinions. But no one in that room, not even Emily, expected a surprise challenger to rise and completely shift the dynamic. Barron Trump, who had been quietly observing from the third row, was not one to be easily subdued. And in the moment he approached the podium, a confrontation was about to unfold. Not just a debate about generations, but also about respect, values, and the art of listening. In a constantly changing world where progress is hailed as the ultimate destination, we often forget that the ground we stand on is not merely an empty foundation. When Barron Trump stepped up to the podium, facing the mockery and cold gaze of Emily Carter, he was not simply defending the older generation. He skillfully pointed out a truth often overlooked. Progress does not come from excluding those who laid the foundation, but from inheriting and building upon those values. It was a message filled with strength and sharp truth, making not only Emily, but the entire room reflect. Emily Carter began her speech with passionate words, criticizing the presence of the older generation in politics and society. She argued that people over 50 were no longer fit to decide the future for the younger generation. With her confident demeanor and sharp words, Emily dismissed traditional values, viewing them as barriers to progress. But her confidence quickly faced a bigger challenge when Barron Trump stepped up to the podium. With calmness and wisdom beyond his years, he began to dismantle each of Emily's points, not with attacks, but with undeniable truths. "You say that the previous generation is holding us back," Barron began, his voice calm but heavy with weight. "But look around you. The technology you use to research your arguments, the smartphone you can't live without, the conveniences of the modern world. All of these are the result of minds that overcame countless challenges decades ago. If we view them as obstacles, it's no different than rejecting the very foundation that helped us stand." The room fell silent for a moment. The students who had once cheered for Emily now began to nod in agreement. This was not just a simple reminder of history, but a call for reflection on gratitude and fairness. Barron continued, "The previous generation isn't just a group of old people clinging to the past. They are the ones who faced wars, economic crises, and changes we have never experienced. They are not perfect, but can we deny that they tried their best to build a better society for us?" That question made everyone pause. In a context where generational differences are often inflated into conflicts, few remember that those who came before were once young, once stood in the position of wanting to change the world. Barron emphasized that true progress cannot be achieved by tearing down core values, but by building upon them with respect and understanding. "Look at the great figures of our time," he continued. "Elon Musk, Bill Gates, scientists researching cancer cures, all of them are over 50. Can we say that age makes them no longer valuable? Or is it the years of experience that have shaped the wisdom and insight they continue to contribute to society?" Emily, once the symbol of confidence, now stood in silence, not because she lacked the will to argue, but because the truth Barron presented was undeniable. In that moment, the debate shifted from a confrontation to an opportunity for reflection. Progress cannot solely be based on youth or new ideas. It requires both wisdom and experience. Barron ended with a message not just for Emily, but for everyone in the room. We don't deny that the younger generation has the ambition and energy to change the world. But if we refuse to listen to those who came before us, refuse to learn from their mistakes and successes, we will repeat the same failures. Progress isn't about tearing everything down and starting over. It's about learning to stand on the shoulders of giants. As Barron stepped away from the podium, The room was filled with a profound silence. No longer were there loud applause or emotional cheers. It was the silence of people thinking, questioning how they viewed the older generation. Emily, with reddened eyes, finally understood one thing. Progress doesn't come from exclusion, but from connection and learning. Barron Trump's story in that debate wasn't just a lesson about generations, but a timeless message. In today's world where change happens rapidly and opinions often clash, we must remember that true strength lies in balancing the past and the future. It is when we respect the values that have shaped us, while continually striving to improve and innovate, that we truly move forward. And above all, it is when we learn to listen to each other, not to refute, but to understand. After a compelling introduction, Emily Carter stepped up to the podium with an aura of complete confidence, as if the stage belonged to her. She stood there, strong and assertive, her eyes glowing and her voice sharp. Her words were full of challenge, directed squarely at the older generations, whom she believed were holding back the progress of society. She spoke of the obsolescence of traditional values, of ideologies she felt were no longer suited to the modern world. Each sentence, each word seemed like an arrow aimed directly at the hearts of those from the older generation, accusing them of being obstacles to the future. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, each round of applause supporting Emily, as though she were speaking for the emotions of so many young people in the room. She spoke of injustice, of decisions being made by people who would not live long enough to see their consequences. She questioned why young people had to be controlled by those who had already passed their prime. They had their time, and they failed. Now it's our turn to take charge, she declared, and the crowd responded with loud cheers. But amidst the applause and approving glances, one person remained seated quietly in the third row, Barron Trump. With his composed demeanor, he showed no sign of being swayed by the fervor enveloping the room. His eyes reflected calmness, paying rare attention to every word Emily spoke. It seemed as though he was waiting for the right moment, not to rush into a rebuttal, but to listen and understand. When Emily shifted to the most controversial topic, proposing an age limit for participation in elections and politics, the anger in her words reached its peak. She called the older generation dinosaurs, clinging to outdated values, the biggest obstacle to the progress of modern society. She mocked religious beliefs, ridiculed conservative views on family and love, and claimed that these individuals were simply trying to control the younger generation with obsolete rules. Her supporters stood and applauded nonstop, as though she had finally voiced the frustration they had been holding in for so long. However, not everyone in the room agreed. Some began to feel the extremism in Emily's viewpoint. Her attacks weren't just on the older generation, but also on the values that had nurtured society for decades. Yet in that moment, no one dared to challenge her, except one person. When the debate moderator asked one last time if anyone wished to respond, the room fell silent. Then, like a quiet yet powerful breeze, Barron Trump stood up. His deep voice resonated, not loud but commanding. "I would." The room seemed to freeze for a moment. All eyes turned toward him, a mixture of curiosity and surprise. Emily, with a sarcastic smile, tried to dismiss his appearance with a mocking remark. But Barron didn't react. He stepped up to the podium with calmness, each step radiating confidence. It wasn't the kind of arrogance, but rather the confidence of someone who knew the value of each word he was about to speak. He didn't start with a harsh rebuttal, but with a thank you to Emily for her passion and dedication. This not only surprised the audience, but also made Emily pause for a moment. That was the power of respect, something Barron seemed to grasp very well. He emphasized that progress wasn't about destroying what was old, but learning from it. He reminded the room that the previous generation wasn't the enemy, but the ones who built the foundation for the world they now lived in. Modern technology, democratic values, and freedom, all were the results of the hard work and sacrifice of the generation Emily had just ridiculed. Barron didn't shy away from concrete examples. He spoke about people over 50 who were still contributing to society, from scientists researching cancer cures to entrepreneurs advancing cutting-edge technologies. He questioned whether society should dismiss the contributions of these individuals just because of their age. That wasn't progress. It was discrimination. He also addressed the issue of values. What Emily called outdated values were actually principles of honesty, responsibility, and respect. Values that had helped build a strong society. He didn't deny that the world needed change, but he stressed that change should come from building upon the existing foundation, not tearing it down. As Barron finished, the room was immersed in silence. But this wasn't the silence of indifference. It was the silence of reflection. The people who had enthusiastically supported Emily now sat still, their eyes distant, as if they were re-evaluating their own perspectives. And that's when everyone realized that this debate wasn't just about age or progress. It was about learning how to listen, how to respect, and how to build the future from the past rather than rejecting it. The debate reached its climax as Barron Trump confidently and calmly stepped up to the podium, a stark contrast to Emily's fiery intensity. The room, which had been buzzing with applause and cheers supporting Emily, suddenly fell into silence, as if captivated by Barron's composed presence. With a gentle smile and bright eyes, Barron began by thanking Emily for her passionate speech, but immediately pivoted with a sharp remark. Passion without wisdom is like a ship without a rudder, strong but dangerous. These words struck at Emily's self-esteem, causing her to lose some of her usual confidence. Barron continued, his deep voice heavy with conviction, carefully dismantling each point Emily had made. When Emily criticized the older generation as outdated and obstructive to progress, Barron cleverly pointed out that the achievements of that generation laid the very foundation for the present-day developments. "We stand on the shoulders of giants," Barron said, his eyes scanning the room. "So why would we want to destroy that foundation just because it doesn't belong to our era?" The atmosphere in the room began to shift. Nods of agreement started appearing in the crowd, including from some of those who had supported Emily earlier. Barron's calmness and confidence not only drew attention, but also made the audience feel the sincerity and depth behind each of his words. He wasn't simply rebutting Emily's arguments, he was creating a real dialogue where listening and respect took center stage. Barron went on to assert that traditional values such as patriotism, responsibility, and sacrifice should not be dismissed simply because they are no longer trendy. He cited specific examples of people over 50 who were still making invaluable contributions to society, scientists researching cures, and innovators in technology. "They are not outdated," Barron said. "They are people who have lived through more challenges than we have, and their experience is priceless." Emily attempted to interject with sarcastic comments, calling Barron a privileged rich kid and criticizing his perceived elitism. However, Barron responded with unwavering calm, refusing to be rattled. He shared his experience of volunteering at homeless shelters for veterans starting at age 14, emphasizing that a person's value lies not in their background, but in their actions. The shift in the room became even more evident. Those who had enthusiastically cheered for Emily now sat in quiet reflection. Barron concluded with a statement that would leave a lasting impact. Progress doesn't come from excluding opposing voices. It comes from listening, understanding, and building upon that diversity. As Barron stepped away from the podium, the room remained silent, but this was not a silence of indifference. It was one of contemplation. His words were not just a rebuttal, but a call for unity and understanding across generations. In that moment, the debate was no longer about who won or lost. It was about the lesson everyone had learned, that differences are not barriers, but bridges, if we learn how to listen and respect each other. The debate between Barron Trump and Emily Carter continued with an emotional and surprising development as sharp arguments gradually gave way to moments of deep self-awareness. After Barron concluded his speech with strength yet full of compassion, silence enveloped the room. The change was not just in the atmosphere of the debate, but also clearly reflected on the faces of every person present. The most surprising shift was in Emily Carter's attitude. Previously, Emily had been the embodiment of passion and conviction, but when faced with Barron's firm and calm arguments, her points began to seem weaker in the eyes of the audience. However, instead of being defeated, Emily began to show signs of doubt. This was no longer a debate about winning or losing. It had become a profound lesson about understanding and listening. Barron didn't attack her with sharp words, but used respect to point out contradictions in her thinking. He didn't make her face embarrassment, but instead made her question her own views. By referencing the contributions of previous generations and emphasizing the importance of learning from the past, Barron sparked in Emily a newfound respect for the generations before her. Emily, who had walked up to the podium with unwavering confidence, now stood there, facing a reality she had never considered. No longer displaying arrogance, her face revealed confusion, and she realized that what she had considered progress was, in fact, a form of exclusion and prejudice. Her eyes no longer reflected defiance but deep reflection, as if she now understood that progress was not about discarding what came before, but rather building upon it. When Professor Dr. Harrison asked if anyone else wished to speak, a long silence fell over the room, making everyone think the debate had ended. But then, something unexpected happened. Emily, with a soft and slightly trembling voice, asked if she could speak once more. This time, she was no longer the strong, confident girl from before, but someone confronting herself. She gently admitted that she had been wrong. She realized the arrogance in her approach and the injustice in generalizing an entire generation simply because of differences in thinking. Emily's apology wasn't the apology of someone who had lost, but rather that of someone willing to listen and learn. She thanked Barron for helping her realize that progress cannot be achieved by excluding others, but must be built on mutual understanding, listening, and connection between generations. Her words were not just a self-awareness for Emily, but a lesson for everyone in the room. This moment marked a turning point not only for Emily, but for everyone present. Applause rang out, but this time, it wasn't to cheer for a victory in rhetoric. It was to praise courage and sincerity. Emily's transformation was a clear testament to the power of dialogue and mutual respect. When the debate concluded, Emily approached Barron with a completely different attitude. She was no longer an adversary but a learner. Her heartfelt apology and willingness to change showed that maturity is not about always being right, but having the ability to admit when you are wrong and being open to what is right from others. The encounter between Barron and Emily was not just a debate about generational differences, but also a valuable lesson about empathy, change, and overcoming personal prejudices. It proved that no matter how many differences there may be, people can still find common ground if they are willing to listen and respect each other. And in that moment, victory didn't belong to sharp arguments or powerful words, but to kindness and personal growth. After the emotionally intense and heart-stirring moments of the debate, a deep stillness settled over the auditorium. Emily Carter, who once stood at the podium with unmatched confidence, now stepped down with sorrowful eyes and a heavy heart. As she walked out of the hall, she couldn't shake off Barron Trump's final words. Words that not only challenged her logic, but profoundly stirred her awareness and emotions. Their next encounter happened in a quieter space. There were no more claps or boos, just two young people facing each other with sincerity and openness. Emily approached slowly, her eyes filled with regret and a quiet sense of gratitude. "Barron, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked softly, her voice stripped of its former pride. To her surprise, Barron wasn't distant or judgmental. Instead, he gave her a warm, understanding smile. "Of course," Emily struggled to find the words. "I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry for everything I said and the way I acted." Her voice was honest and raw, an unfamiliar vulnerability she hadn't felt before. "I thought I was fighting for progress, but now I realize I wasn't listening. I didn't understand that progress isn't about rejecting the past. It's about learning from it." Barron nodded, his expression filled with empathy. "You know, we all make mistakes. At our age, it's easy to get swept up in ideas we believe are right and forget that different perspectives have value too. What matters most is what we take away from those mistakes." That moment wasn't just a conversation. It was a meeting of two young minds, once at odds, now connected by understanding. Emily, who had once spoken with fiery determination, now felt a quiet relief in being heard and in learning. She realized that true strength doesn't always lie in winning a debate, but in being able to admit when you're wrong. Later, Emily made the decision to stand before the auditorium once more, not to argue, but to express her remorse and appreciation for the generations that came before. "Today, I learned a valuable lesson about humility and gratitude," she said. "I was wrong to think that the older generation is holding us back. In truth, they are the very foundation that helps us move forward. I'm sorry I didn't realize that sooner." Her words weren't just an apology, they were a moment of awakening. The room fell silent, not out of tension, but out of genuine emotion. Those who had once cheered for her now understood that maturity isn't just about standing your ground, but knowing when to pause, listen, and grow. From afar, Barron smiled, content. The debate was over, but what lingered wasn't who won or lost. It was the shared value of empathy and understanding. In that moment, both Barron and Emily showed that this generation isn't just eager for change. They're willing to learn from the past to shape a better future. After the emotionally intense moments in the debate, a sense of calm enveloped the room. Emily Carter, who had once stood at the podium with unmatched confidence, now walked down with eyes filled with sorrow and a heavy heart. As she exited the hall, she couldn't stop thinking about Barron Trump's final words. Words that not only challenged her reasoning, but also profoundly stirred her inner awareness and emotions. The meeting between Emily and Barron that followed took place in a quieter space. Gone were the applause and the jeers. It was now just two young individuals facing each other with sincerity and openness. Emily approached cautiously, her eyes reflecting both regret and gratitude. "Barron, can we talk for a moment?" Her voice was softer now, devoid of the arrogance that had once defined her. Surprisingly, Barron showed no distance or judgment. Instead, he greeted her with a warm, understanding smile. "Of course." Emily struggled to find the right words to express her feelings. "I just want to say, I am really sorry for everything I said, for the way I behaved." In her voice was sincerity, a rare feeling that perhaps she had never truly experienced so deeply before. "I thought I was fighting for progress, but now I realize I wasn't listening. I didn't understand that progress isn't about denying the past, it's about learning from it." Barron nodded, his gaze filled with empathy. "You know, we all make mistakes. At our age, it's easy to get caught up in the ideals we believe to be right, to the point where we forget that differing opinions have value too. The important thing is what we learn from those mistakes." That moment wasn't just a conversation. It was the intersection of two young souls, Once in fierce opposition, now connected by understanding. Emily, who had once stood firmly at the debate podium with determination, now felt a sense of relief as she was listened to and learned from. She realized that sometimes strength doesn't lie in winning an argument, but in accepting that you're not always right. After their conversation, Emily decided to stand before the crowd once more. But this time, it wasn't to debate, but to express her remorse and appreciation for the generations before her. Today, I've learned a valuable lesson about humility and gratitude. I was wrong in thinking that the previous generation was holding us back, when in fact, they are the foundation that allows us to go further. I'm sorry for not realizing this sooner. Her words were not just an apology, but a call to awareness. The room was silent, not out of tension, but from emotion. Those who had once supported her now realized that maturity doesn't only come from staunchly defending one's viewpoint, but also from knowing when to stop and listen. Barron stood from a distance, smiling contentedly. The debate was over, but what remained was not who won or lost. It was the value of empathy and understanding. In that moment, both Barron and Emily proved that the younger generation not only knows how to demand change, but also how to learn from the past in order to build a better future. The debate concluded not only with resounding applause, but also with a noticeable shift in the perceptions of everyone present. Emily, once steadfast in her strong beliefs, learned a valuable lesson in respect and humility. Barron Trump, with his calm demeanor and sharp reasoning, proved that true strength lies not in winning a debate, but in fostering understanding and connection between generations. This story is a testament to the power of dialogue and the potential for change when we dare to listen. The debate concluded not only with resounding applause, but also with a noticeable shift in the perceptions of everyone present. Emily, once steadfast in her strong beliefs, learned a valuable lesson in respect and humility. Barron Trump, with his calm demeanor and sharp reasoning, proved that true strength lies not in winning a debate, but in fostering understanding and connection between generations. This story is a testament to the power of dialogue and the potential for change when we dare to listen.